Every successful digital transformation story starts with APIs. But here is the thing. Building great APIs is just half of the battle. The other half is perhaps the more difficult part, which is to make the APIs discoverable, accessible, and used by all of your developers. So, hello everyone, I'm Srijan. I'm a senior product manager with the Amazon API Gateway Service team, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about building a culture of API excellence with Amazon API Gateway and the tools that it provides. So in the next 20 minutes, I'll be walking you through a framework that will help you turn API chaos into a streamlined discovery mechanism. It'll help you cut operational risk, and it'll further your journey into building a culture of API excellence. So we will be covering three key areas in this talk. First, we will quantify the problem that a fragmented API ecosystem will result in. And next, we will try and put some definition around what the culture, the mindset of API excellence is like. And finally, we will introduce the platform solution that ties all of this together. Let's start by getting a quick pulse check to understand the true scale of the problem that you're facing today. I want you to think about your organization and silently answer the three questions that come up. So first, how many business units or major product areas does your organization have? Take a quick mental note of that number. This number is your first variable, and it represents the organizational silos that you operate in. Next, how many AWS accounts do you envision having under each of these organizations that you have? We know that you don't use just one account, hopefully not. And if you are using multiple accounts, and this immediately multiplies the complexity. So, and finally, if you think about the number of APIs that you have in each of those accounts, and if you've truly embraced API Gateway, you might have about 600 of them. You can immediately understand the scale of the problem that you're dealing with. You're not just looking at random APIs, but you're looking at an ecosystem that has hundreds of thousands of APIs. So for an organization of your scale, enterprises, we see that number being somewhere around tens of thousands of APIs. Now, this gives you the total surface area of your APIs that you want to secure, want to be discoverable, and so on. So the immediate challenges that come to mind, if you think about it, if you were to multiply these numbers, is how do your developers actually even discover these APIs today? How many Slack messages, meetings, or tickets does it take for you to find the right endpoint? Second, how often does it happen that you discover the same functionality being available across multiple endpoints? Right? You might have one or two endpoints that do more or less the same thing. Third, how do you reliably know which one is to be sunset, which one is an active mode? Then fourth, what happens when a new account rolls in? Say you have an acquisition that has been done, and you have a new organization that has been onboarded, and you get a new account. So how do you even know if there is an overlap in between these two, the acquisition that you've made and your own organization? And finally, who is specifically in charge of keeping all of this API landscape that you have, or the catalog that you have, clean and up to date? As you think through these problems, you will realize that the fundamental issue that you're facing is API fragmentation. And this API fragmentation has a few problems, creates a few problems, right? The first one is it will slow down your discovery. Slow discovery, as you know, will lead into poor onboarding mechanisms for your teams. They'll take more time to get productive. It also will inhibit reuse. So when a team, your developers are into a digital treasure hunt of sorts, wherein they're trying to find the right endpoint, and if they don't find the right endpoint, they reinvent the wheel, they discover this thing again, and that adds to the API sprawl again. And thirdly, it actually hides risk. So the API sprawl actually creates a security blind spot where you have large swaths of ungoverned API resulting into a shadow IT organization almost, and where you cannot really secure what you can't see, which leaves you exposed from a compliance perspective. The solution to this API sprawl is not to build more, but to organize what you already have and catalog it in a very nice manner. Now, let's talk a little bit about the API excellence mindset. My goal with this slide is actually to give you a common framework for you to think through how you want to be able to classify all of these APIs. So to capture the full value of your API investment, you need to start thinking about your APIs as products. So think of APIs as a long-term strategic asset that needs to be enhanced, maintained, modified, and so on. So it would be prudent for us to think of them as products and that serve both your internal and external customers to achieve an outcome, right? And next, you need to start thinking about work backwards from your API consumers and not from your backends. So you need to start working backwards, and you need to make sure that you're not walking through any one-way doors when you're designing your APIs. And finally, every API product needs to have a single-threaded owner who is responsible for the quality, for the success, for the operational excellence, usability, and adoption of the APIs. This will eliminate redundancy and will maximize your returns on your API investment. So to solve all of these problems, we recently announced the launch of Amazon API Gateway Portals. Amazon API Gateway Portal is an AWS native, fully managed developer portal that helps you manage API chaos and streamline discovery across your accounts. You can control documentation freshness, you can enable scoped access, and you can have this all cataloged, and you can do this while staying inside the AWS boundary without having to manage any additional infrastructure. You can stand up a branded portal, and this will give you access to all of your APIs. Developers can find and try those APIs. Security organization will gain access across the organization without having to export all of these configurations. And platform teams will cut duplication and governance drift. So let's dive a little deeper into what the developer portal entails and what it enables you to do. So first, you are able to create products using Amazon API Gateway Portals. When you create products, you can pick endpoints, and you can pick a particular path, you can pick a particular stage, and you can add that into that abstraction that we call an API product. Once you've done that, you can then move on to, you can actually share these products. So when you're sharing these products, if you have multiple accounts, you can create products in each of these accounts, and you can share them over to the account where you are actually trying to build the portal. So this will allow you to have a unified portal, or it can help you provide a unified front for all of your APIs. Next, you can actually control your documentation freshness. So from a documentation perspective, we allow you to get started very, very quickly, and we will pull in the documentation from your API Gateway runtime. And if you're happy with that documentation, you can go ahead with that. Or you can actually override that documentation and put in your own documentation there. And finally, we allow you to also configure the ability to try that API out from a consumer perspective. So once you've created this portal and these products, you can actually enable your developers to try the API out right from the portal, so that they don't have to go back and forth over Slack messages. Now that you've actually created all of these API products, let's talk about the portal itself. The portal is going to house all of these products together, right? So from a portal perspective, we first allow you to have scoped access. So you can use Cognito user pools to restrict scope to this developer portal. Second, you can choose in between a default domain name or a custom domain name so that it aligns with the branding guidelines of your organization. And finally, we also give you the ability to get some portal-based metrics as to how often people are going and visiting the portal that you have created. The next thing that I want to talk about is once you've created the portal itself, the housing, the casing that will hold all of your APIs, you can add all of your API products, not only from the account that you are creating the portal on, but also from across other accounts from where the API products have been shared to you. So this will allow you, like I was saying, present a unified portal for your organization. If you so choose, you can also have distinct portals for each of the accounts that you have, but you can also have a unified portal for your organization with this. Then you can also customize the look and feel, the branding guidelines, whatever your organization has. You can put your logo on it. You can follow the color schemes for your organization, and that will help you follow the branding guidelines of your organization. Then you can actually generate a preview of your developer portal. This will allow you to check everything is perfect from a look and feel perspective, from the products that you've created, from the ability to try the features out or the APIs out, and then you can finally publish the developer portal. So to walk you through at a high level, to summarize, API gateway portals allow you to go from API commit to API adoption in four simple steps. You can continue to use your current documentation, or edit the documentation and then create API products and add them to the developer portal. You can configure scoped access, and you can customize the custom domain name feature on the developer portal. You can also control the branding on the developer portal. And finally, once you publicize the developer portal's URL, your API consumers, be it internal or external, can actually come and try out the APIs that you have hosted on that portal. So there are a couple of QR codes here which will lead you to the launch blog and the documentation for the developer portal. So if you want to learn more about this feature, I'm happy to talk to you off the stage and walk you through more details of the feature that we have launched recently. So thank you so much, everyone. Please complete the survey at the end of on your mobile apps. Happy to take questions offline off the stage. Thank you.